Okay, our next guest is a former United States Marine infantryman, a veteran of the Iraq War, and is the founder and president of an organization called Vetpaw, which stands for, and I think this is really nifty because it almost sounds like something to do with dogs, right? When you first hear about it. But check this out, this is really cool. Vetpaw stands for Veterans Empowered to Protect African Wildlife. This is one of the coolest organizations I've ever seen. Vetpaw is an amazing organization that channels the skills, discipline, and experience of military veterans for the purpose of safeguarding wildlife in Africa and other places in the world too, right? Mostly Africa. Vetpaw is also instrumental in providing training and advisement. Advisement is a term we use that has implications to the park rangers who are on the front line battle against poaching, which often places them in the life-threatening predicament of having to confront Islamic terrorism. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Marine Corps veteran and the founder of Vetpaw, Ryan Tate. Hey Ryan, how's it going?
Good, man. How are you?
Good.
I was actually, when we came up with Vetpaw, I actually regretted it to start because most people, like foundations that you go and pitch to support, they always thought, they didn't open the email because they think it has to do with dogs or something. So, but thanks for having me. Really appreciate it, this platform, and it's great to be involved.
It's exciting to talk to you after I didn't know anything about you until Theo told me about you. And the more that I started, I think this battery is dying, my friend.
We can use this one. I can.
Okay. So the more I started looking into it, I was like, oh man, this is really cool.
Need a job?
What's that?
Do you need a job?
Maybe. So, just give the audience an overview from the top down on where Vetpaw came from, how you came about, how did you come up with this idea, and then talk to us a little bit about what goes on over there.
So Vetpaw started, let me go back. I was born and raised in South Tampa, before South Tampa is what it is today. Very bougie and the hot spot to be. MacDill Air Force Base was there, and my mother was always an advocate for the military. So was my father. My mother's a little bit redneck, so she's always like, yeah, military, support the troops, this and that. And I always grew up seeing, I think it was every Wednesday on Bayshore Boulevard, coming home from Plant High School, the people, the men and women that were holding the flags to support the military. Do you remember that back in the day? There used to be a group every week when the war started.
Well, when the war started, I wasn't here, brother. When it started, I was in California at Defense Language Institute, and then, I had a stop off over at Fort Bragg for about 12 years.
Yeah, you're a lot older than me, so. Anyways.
Fort Liberty now.
These things happen. But anyway, so I would see that, and I just loved the military. I was a skinny, not so skinny now, but a skinny, toe-headed kid growing up in an Italian family. My dad had 4 brothers. They were all massive guys. So I was the black sheep of the family, I guess, or the blonde sheep. And I needed that confidence. I just didn't have that growing up, and I wanted to be a leader. And so the wars happened. I was at Plant High School in English class. I watched the planes go into the towers, and it was shocking. And I think it was 16, and I went directly to the Marine Corps recruiting station the very next day, because I think they closed all the offices that day. And I signed my delayed entry program. I told my mother that I was signing up to do something in the air wing, but it ended up being infantry. I changed it. She said, I will sign the papers for you to go as long as you don't go infantry, because I dated a Marine infantry guy and he was nuts. So anyways, I lied to her, switched it up, and went to Iraq and Afghanistan as an infantryman. I served in some of the bloodiest battles in modern day history. And it really showed me the good, the best, and the worst of humankind. We can be a great species on this planet. We can also be the worst. And it just gave me an interesting contrast that early in life. And so I did my time. I decided to give my mother a break and get out of the Marine Corps when I had planned on retiring. But after my last tour, I said, all right, now it's probably a good time. This is not a healthy career. I'm not going to make it much longer doing these tours. So I got out and I worked for the U.S. Department of State. Thought it was cool. I'm wearing a suit, an earpiece, guarding high-profile diplomats, and that was cool for about 2 weeks until I picked up the dry cleaning of a diplomat, and I'm like, geez, like what? This is not what I signed up for. So I lost my purpose. I was miserable. I was coping with PTSD. I had a lot of traumatic brain injuries, and I really thought I was doing a good job, but in reality, I was a liability to society. One wrong move by somebody else, and I was on it. It was like a quick reaction force. Just let's go. Let's end this problem right now. And that's dangerous to myself and those around me. But I decided, hey, I've got a job. This is a time when a lot of veterans, a lot of people didn't have jobs, and I wasn't complacent about my job. I took it seriously, but I was blessed to have it. So I planned on retiring with it. But one night, it was a Sunday night, and I didn't plan on watching this documentary, but it came on after the show that I was watching, and it showed what the royal family was doing in Africa with another foundation to save wildlife. I'm like, well, hey, I like animals. I was volunteering at local shelters. That was the extent of my service to my community. And what I saw were 3 different scenes that just shook me to the core. The first was a dead elephant with its face totally cut off. The trunk was separated from the body. Now I'm woken up. I just saw the saddest animal abuse case I've ever seen. Grossed out. I'm pissed off and I'm in shock. The next scene they showed was 3 park rangers laying dead in the bush in a filed line, all next to each other. And now the PTSD starts kicking in because I personally had to line bodies like that. And then the third scene was a video footage of a rhino where the poachers took tranquilizers off the black market, they purchased them, and darted her because a tranquilizer gun doesn't go bang. It's nice and quiet, so nobody's going to be alerted to it to come running. And once she went down, I should mention she had a newborn calf. She ran out in the bush. But once she went down, they hacked her face off, and she woke up from that tranquilizer. And the video footage was conservationists taking this, waiting for the veterinarians to get there to put her down. I watched her die a slow death, and there were tears coming down her eyes. I started crying. That was the first time I think I'd cried in a long time. But all those emotions within me, like Will Ferrell says, it's a glass jar of emotions. It shattered. And I was angry, embarrassed, humiliated. Every negative emotion under the sun, I was feeling it. It all came out. And I'm remembering this like it was yesterday. And that's when I realized, hey, I've got a purpose again. When they started talking about ISIS doing this poaching and supporting 40 to 50% of their African operations, which, by the way, is one of their bloodiest, and at the time was their bloodiest branch of ISIS, was in Africa. But the fact that they're funding that off of this iconic wildlife, these animals. My nickname growing up was Rhino. It's on my high school letterman jacket. R-Y-N-O, though. But to know that, like, our grandchildren, they may never see these animals. And I said, hey, I've got some skills. I think this could work. Started going to Africa, long story short. The State Department said, you can't do that anymore, or you're not gonna have a job. And I said, well, I quit. And so I went to Africa, I started living there. It was working, the skills were working. I realized I needed more veterans out here. We were a nonprofit at the time. And so now my job is to come back to the States and fundraise, but my team is always on the ground. We've had a full-time presence in Africa since 2016. Never had an animal poached under our watch. And I don't think you'll see another organization that can say that. I've yet to find one.
It is. I'm gonna let you guys all know right now that you're gonna see a short film here shortly that talks about Vetpaw and what he's describing. I gotta warn you, you're gonna see a glimpse of it.
I didn't pick the video.
And
He did.
it is bad. It's bad. So if you might wanna, some of you might want to maybe look down or step out for just a moment, but the reason I chose that video is because that's what really made me go, that's what really made me realize how profound what you're doing is. And when you tie it together with the trade of the ivory and how that is funding the terrorism and what they're doing to these animals is absolutely the most inhumane thing I've ever seen. I mean, we already know that's the way certain organizations operate anyway, but when you see it firsthand that way, it's just like, it really almost just reignites the fire in your gut to go back out and like, all right, just give me my equipment and where's my rifle? Let's go.
Yeah, I'll say this too. It's just a short piece of the film. It's at the very beginning. I would encourage you, if you can. I mean, if you're eating, I get it. It's not. I'm not here to. If I had known that what I was going to see in that documentary was going to be in it before I watched it, I wouldn't have watched it. That said, I would encourage you to watch it because this is what our species is doing to another species, and it's really important. And maybe that'll encourage you to share this mission with somebody else.
But it's about awareness because even I had no idea. I had no idea. You hear about it all the time, the poaching. We know that one species of rhinos is already gone extinct, and you hear about it. But then when I got turned on to you guys and started looking into it, I was like, what? It's unbelievable, guys. It really is. So awareness is just huge because I think the average American citizen is just not exposed to the reality of what goes on outside the borders of this country. And some of it is just like it's from another universe almost, it's crazy. And I think Africa is one of those places. You've answered a lot of questions already. Talk to me a little bit about, first of all, let me ask you, were you in Fallujah?
Was.
In 2004?
Yes.
I was in Fallujah in 2003. So, yeah. We'll share another bigger story after the thing. That's great. What specific types of skill sets from veterans integrate well with Vetpaw? And like how do those skills get put to use with Vetpaw's mission?
Sure, and I'm really glad that you asked that because a lot of people think that we're just, a bunch of mercenaries in the bush hidden under a nonprofit, title. We're not. We do the boogeyman stuff when we need to. I'm not here to do a job for any local African. We don't wear American flags on our shoulders. That's company policy. We're not a bunch of freedom fighters following the freedom type crap. But a lot of my time in the Marine Corps was humanitarian stuff. I mean, tsunami disaster relief, the 04 tsunami. That was terrible. I mean, that was, you talk about traumatizing, but helping people. I missed helping people. And we practice a One Health approach to conservation, meaning if you can hand up, not a handout with impoverished communities, but if you can give them a hand up with a skill set, we bring in a lot of subject matter experts to teach job skills to locals. We have women's co-ops, we give health clinics. But as far as the military is concerned, and by the way, if you help the people to help themselves, then they won't need a reason to poach. And that's what it's all about. But from a military standpoint, trauma medicine, shooting and moving, night tactics, area of operation management, these ranger teams are so small, but their parks are so vast. So you can't fix poaching by just throwing 10 dudes out in the bush, men and women out in the bush, saying, go catch somebody in a 100,000 acre reserve. You have to use intelligence, gathering and exploitation, think smarter, not harder. So things like that. Yeah.
I know a little about intelligence.
Prove it.
Great. How can veterans become involved?
Sure. So we take volunteers all the time. We're always looking for vets to deploy. We also take civilians that want to come out. We have an ecotourism program where it's very cheap comparatively to the other programs, but you can actually go out with our team in a protected area. We do a lot of conservation activities with veterinarians. We relocate animals. We have the top rhino research program in all of South Africa, and that's the government that's titled that. So that's pretty cool. So you get to help with those things, and all of that money goes back into supporting our mission. If you have a skill that you can bring to the table, if you're a doctor, a nurse, if you have a job skill where you can teach that to an African, we need you. Or hey, if you've got a platform similar to this, to where we can share our mission, let us know. It's very important. Terrorism is a worldwide problem, and just because it's in Africa doesn't mean it doesn't affect us here in the States. So, yeah.
Is there anything else you want to let us know?
No, I think only other thing I would say is Operation Code Vet is awesome. That is like the most innovative thing I've heard. So,
would anybody like to ask Ryan any questions? If so, just raise your hand and I'll just call him. No?
I talked a lot. So.
Okay, great. Thanks, man.
Yeah, thanks for your service.